Jake Morrison walked slowly down the long hallway toward the big doors. His black uniform was clean and pressed, but his hands were shaking a little. Behind him, Captain Lisa Rodriguez kept her face calm, but Jake could see she was angry too. They both knew what was coming. The doors opened with a soft sound. The room beyond was huge, bigger than a football field. Strange lights moved along the walls in patterns that hurt to look at. Hundreds of alien beings sat in circles around the center of the room. Some looked like giant birds with silver feathers. Others were made of what looked like living crystal. That sang when they moved. The strangest ones had skin that glowed with different colors. Showing their feelings. At the very center sat High Counselor Exile. She was tall and thin, with 6 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. Her skin was pale blue, and she wore robes that seemed to move by themselves. When she looked at Jake, all 6 eyes focused on him like he was something dirty she had found on her shoe. Jake had been Earth's voice to the galaxy for 3 years. He had made friends with some of these aliens. He had helped make deals that brought peace to worlds he could not even pronounce. But today, none of that mattered. Ambassador Morrison, Exile said. Her voice came through a machine that turned her alien sounds into English. You stand before this council as the final speaker for your species. Jake stepped forward. The floor was smooth and cold under his feet. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes watched. Some looked sad. Most looked relieved. A few looked scared, but not of him. They were scared of what might happen after humans were gone. High Counselor, Jake said, I ask this council to think again about this choice. Humans have fought beside you. We have died for worlds we had never even seen before. We have given everything to keep this alliance safe. A sound like breaking. Glass came from the crystal beings. It was their way of laughing, but there was no humor in it. One of them, a creature that looked like a walking diamond, spoke up. Your species speaks of giving, it said in a voice like wind chimes. But you take more than you give. You take territory. You take resources. You take control of every situation you enter. Jake felt his face get hot. We take nothing that is not freely given. Every human colony in Alliance space was built on empty worlds. Every resource deal was fair trade. Every time we took control, it was because someone asked us to. That is the problem, said Veltar, the bird-like Aquilian delegate. His feathers rustled as he stood up. You are asked because others fear you. They give because they think you will take anyway. This is not cooperation. This is protection money. Lisa stepped forward, but Jake held up his hand to stop her. He knew she wanted to speak, but this was his job. He had to try one more time to make them understand. Look at the facts, Jake said, his voice getting louder. Before humans joined this alliance, how many wars were there? How many times did pirates attack your trade ships? How many worlds were lost to raiders from outside the galaxy? There were problems, admitted Counselor Zixara, whose people looked like walking plants. But we solved them with words, not weapons. You solved nothing, Jake shot back. You talked while people died. You held meetings while entire civilizations were wiped out. The Kelani Empire destroyed 12 worlds before we stopped them. The Blood Fleet killed millions before we hunted them down. The Void Cult almost summoned something that would have eaten this entire section of space. And in stopping them, you became like them, Exara said coldly. You built weapons that could crack planets. You created soldiers who feel no fear. You turned space into a battlefield. Jake looked around the room. He saw fear in many of the alien faces. But it was not fear of outside enemies. It was fear of the humans who had protected them for so long. We built those weapons so you would never need them, he said quietly. We became soldiers so you could remain peaceful. Every human who died, and your wars died so that your children could grow up safe. But at what cost? Asked another delegate. This one looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. Your entertainment is full of violence. Your children play war games. Your heroes are all killers. Even your peaceful activities are competitions where someone must lose. Jake opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. How could he explain that competition made humans stronger? How could he make them understand that their war games taught lessons about working together and never giving up? How could he tell them that sometimes someone had to be willing to lose everything so that others could win? We are not like you, he said finally. We never claimed to be, but that difference is what kept you alive. Dexara stood up. All around the room, other aliens stood too. It was like a wave moving outward from the center. The vote has already been taken, she announced, by a count of 437 to 12, with 15 abstentions. This council has decided that humanity poses too great a risk to continue as members of this alliance. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the stomach. He had known this was coming, but hearing it still hurt. You have 30 standard days to remove all human presence from Alliance space, Nexara continued. All trade agreements are ended. All defense contracts are void. All diplomatic relations are cut. Humanity will return to its own system and stay there. You're making a mistake, Jake said. His voice was calm, but inside he was screaming. There are things out there in the dark that you don't know about. Enemies that we've kept away from you. Without us, ... Without you, we will find peace again. Thaltar interrupted. True peace. Not the peace that comes from fear, but the peace that comes from understanding. Jake looked at Lisa. She nodded slightly. There was nothing more to say. Then we will go, Jake said. But remember this day. Remember what you chose. And when the dark comes for you, remember that you sent away the only ones willing to stand in its path. He turned and walked toward the doors. Lisa followed him. Behind them, the alien delegates began to talk excitedly. They sounded happy, like children who had just gotten rid of a strict teacher. The doors closed behind them with a final sound in the hallway. Lisa finally spoke. They have no idea what they just did. Jake nodded. They think we were the monsters. They're about to learn what real monsters look like. How long do you think they have? Jake thought about the reports that came from the edge of known space. Strange ships, missing colonies, signals that cut off in the middle of distress calls. Things that the Alliance had never seen, because humans had always stopped them first. 2 years, he said. Maybe 3 if they're lucky. They walked down the long hallway together. Behind them, the alien delegates celebrated their victory. Ahead of them lay the transport that would take them home to a humanity that was about to stand alone against the galaxy. Neither of them looked back. Commander Alex Harper stood at the big window looking out at space. Below him, the planet New Terra spun slowly. Cities glowed like jewels across the dark side of the world. Ships moved between the planet and the space stations like busy ants. It had been 5 years since the aliens kicked humanity out of their alliance. 5 years of being alone in the galaxy, but humans had not given up. They had not crawled into a corner to die. Instead, they had built something amazing. Sir, said Dr. Rachel Kim as she walked up behind him. She carried a tablet that showed numbers and charts. The factories are making 12% more stuff than last month. All our closed systems are working better than we ever thought they could. Alex smiled, but it was not a happy smile. Funny how much we can do when we stop trying to make everyone else happy. Rachel nodded. When the aliens cut off all trade, humans had to learn to make everything themselves. They could not buy alien technology anymore. They could not trade for rare metals from distant worlds. They had to figure out everything from scratch and they had done more than just figure it out. They had made it better. The new human ships were faster than anything the aliens had ever built. The quantum drives could push a ship across the galaxy in days instead of months. Human factories could make more goods with less waste. Human farms could grow food on worlds that aliens said were too harsh for life. Any word from the listening posts? Alex asked. Rachel's face got serious. That's why I came to find you. Ben has something you need to see. They walked through the corridors of the space station. Everything was clean and new. The walls showed pictures of Earth and the human colonies. Children's artwork hung next to technical drawings of new ships. It felt like home in a way the alien stations never had. Communications Officer Ben Torres looked up when they entered his room. His desk was covered with screens showing star maps and data streams. His face was worried. Commander, Ben said, we've been picking up signals from Alliance space. It's bad. Really bad. The main screen lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red dots showed where battles had happened. Yellow areas showed worlds that had gone silent. There were too many of both. The hegemony? Alex asked. Ben nodded. They came out of the outer rim 6 months ago. Hit the border worlds first. The Alliance tried to negotiate with them. How did that work out? About as well as you'd expect. The hegemony doesn't want to talk. They want to conquer. They've taken 17 worlds already. Alex studied the map. The red dots made a clear pattern. The enemy was not just attacking random targets. They were going after important worlds. Planets with big populations. Systems with valuable resources. Places that would hurt the Alliance the most. What about the Alliance fleets? He asked. Ben pulled up another screen. This one showed ship movements and battle reports. Gone. The Zephyrian Third Fleet was destroyed at Kilos Prime. The Vorthan crystal ships tried to make a stand at their home system. The enemy broke through in 6 hours. Rachel looked at the numbers. How is that possible? The Alliance had thousands of ships. They had thousands of police ships, Alex said quietly. Not warships. When humans were in the Alliance, we handled all the real fighting. The other species got used to having us do the hard work. Ben brought up more data. It gets worse. The Alliance is trying to organize a defense, but they can't agree on anything. The Aquilians want to retreat to the core worlds. The Crystal people want to try negotiating again. The plant-like ones are saying this is all punishment for being too aggressive. Alex laughed, but there was no joy in it. Too aggressive? They kicked us out for being too violent, and now they're getting killed because they're not violent enough. There's more, Ben said. He looked like he did not want to share the next part. We are detecting massive refugee movements. Billions of aliens are running toward the center of the galaxy, but they're running out of safe places to go. The screens showed streams of ships fleeing from the advancing enemy. Whole populations were abandoning their home worlds. Families that had lived in the same place for thousands of years were packing everything they could carry and running for their lives. The enemy is letting them run, Alex realized. They want the aliens scared. Fear makes people easier to control. Rachel pulled up another report. Our deep space monitors are tracking the enemy fleet movements. They're not just random raiders. This is organized. They have a plan. A tactical display showed enemy ships moving in careful patterns. They avoided strong defensive positions and hit weak targets. They cut supply lines and communication networks. They made the Alliance react instead of act. Whoever is leading them knows how the Alliance thinks, Alex said. They know the aliens will try to talk first and fight second. They know the Alliance can't make quick decisions because everyone has to agree. What about the Council worlds? Ben asked. Are they safe? Alex looked at the map again. The enemy advance was like a slow wave, moving toward the center of the galaxy. At the current rate, they would reach the main Alliance worlds in less than a year. No, he said simply. Nobody is safe. The Alliance spent so long depending on us that they forgot how to defend themselves. Rachel looked sad. A lot of good people are going to die. People who voted to kick us out, Ben said angrily. People who called us monsters and warmongers. Why should we care what happens to them? Alex was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, New Terra continued to spin. Human children were being born down there. Human families were building new lives. Humanity had a future, even if the rest of the galaxy was falling apart. But he also thought about Zephyrian families running from their homes. He thought about crystal cities being smashed for their valuable minerals. He thought about peaceful, plant people who had never hurt anyone facing an enemy that showed no mercy. Because that's who we are, he said finally. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help them because they need it. Ben looked confused. But they threw us out. They said we were too dangerous. They were afraid, Rachel said softly. They saw our weapons and our soldiers and thought we were the enemy. They didn't understand that sometimes you need dangerous people on your side to protect you from the outside. Really dangerous people. Alex nodded. The Alliance made a mistake. A big one. But that doesn't mean we should let billions of innocent people die because their leaders were foolish. So what do we do? Ben asked. Alex looked at the tactical displays one more time. The enemy was strong, but they had weaknesses. They were far from home. Their supply lines were stretched thin. They were used to fighting weak opponents who gave up easily. They had never fought humans. We watch, Alex said. We learn everything we can about this enemy, and we prepare. Prepare for what? Alex smiled, and this time there was something dangerous in it. For the day they come asking for help. Because they will. Pride only lasts so long when your children are dying. And if they don't ask, then we'll have to decide how much we're willing to watch the galaxy burn. The three humans stood in the communications room, surrounded by data about death and destruction. Somewhere out in space, an ancient alliance was learning that peace was not something you could vote for. It was something you had to fight for, and the only people who knew how to fight were the ones they had sent away. Captain Steve Walsh woke up to the sound of alarms. His ship, the Meridian, was deep in empty space between the stars. They were supposed to be safe out here. Nothing should be able to find them. Captain, to the bridge, came the voice over the ship's speakers. We have an urgent message coming in. Steve pulled on his uniform and ran to the control room. His crew was already there, looking at their screens with confused faces. Lieutenant Amy Chun turned around when he walked in. Sir, we're getting a transmission on the old Alliance emergency channel. It's encrypted with codes that are 5 years old. Steve felt his heart beat faster. Nobody had used those codes since humanity was kicked out of the Alliance. Put it through to my ready room. Maximum security. He walked into his private office and closed the door. The hologram projector hummed to life. Slowly, a figure appeared in the blue light. Steve almost did not recognize her. High Counselor Vex Aura looked terrible. Her blue skin was pale and dirty. Her fancy robes were torn and stained with something dark. Her 6 eyes were red and tired. Behind her, Steve could see what used to be the Grand Council chamber. Now the walls were black with burn marks. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow. Pieces of broken ceiling lay on the floor. To the government of humanity, she began. Her voice shook as she spoke. I am High Counselor Vex Aura of the Galactic Council. I speak to you not as your better, but as someone whose people are about to die. Steve leaned forward in his chair. He had been at the trial 5 years ago. He had watched this proud alien woman call humans monsters and throw them out of the alliance. Now she looked like a beggar asking for help. The hegemony has taken 47. Of our worlds, Vexara continued, our fleets are gone. Our armies are scattered. Our people are running with nowhere left to run. A loud explosion shook the room behind her. Dust fell from the ceiling. Vexara looked over her shoulder with fear in all 6 eyes, then turned back to the camera. We have maybe 6 months before they reach the core worlds. 6 months before everything our peoples built over thousands of years is destroyed forever. Her voice broke. Steve had never seen an alien cry before. He was not sure if that was what she was doing now, but something wet was running down her face. We were wrong about humanity, she said. We see that now. We thought your weapons made you dangerous. We thought your soldiers made you violent. We thought your willingness to fight made you enemies of peace. She took a shaky breath. But we understand now. You were not threats to our peace. You were the guardians of our peace. We took away our shield and called ourselves wise. Another explosion, closer this time. Voices shouted in the background. Someone was fighting very close to the council chamber. We formally ask for help from the Human Federation. We offer full membership in the Alliance again. We offer complete trade agreements. We offer. Her voice caught. And we offer formal recognition of humanity's role as protector of Alliance. Space. The transmission started to break up. XRS image flickered in and out. Please, she said, and the word sounded strange in her alien voice. We know we have no right to ask. We know we treated you badly. But our children are dying. Our worlds are burning. If there is any mercy left in the human heart, please help us. The image disappeared. Steve sat alone in his office, staring at the empty air where the hologram had been. He pressed the button to call his communications officer. Chun, get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Sir, that will take 6 hours to get through all the security checks. Then start now and prepare a full copy of that transmission. They need to see this. Word of the message spread through the human colonies like wildfire. Within hours, emergency meetings were happening on every major world. The news channels could talk about nothing else. The aliens who had thrown humanity out were begging for help. President Monica Davis called together all the important leaders. The meeting room in the Capitol building on Earth was packed. Military officers sat next to scientists. Colonial governors sat next to business leaders. Everyone wanted to have their say. Admiral Greg Thompson spoke first. He was old and scarred from battles the Alliance had already forgotten. They threw us away like garbage, he said, his voice full of anger. They called us monsters and told us to get out. Now they want us to come running back to save them? Let them burn. 6 billion Zephyrians live on the homeworld, said Dr. Patricia Lee from the Humanitarian Council. They didn't vote to kick us out. Their leaders did. Do we let innocent people die because of what their government decided? What about our people? Asked Governor Tony Martinez from the Mars colony. We've spent 5 years building new lives, new homes, new futures. Why should we risk human lives for aliens who hate us? They don't all hate us, said Admiral Kate Foster. She was younger than Thompson, but she had commanded human fleets in the border wars before the Exile. I got messages from some of my old contacts in the Alliance military. A lot of them never wanted us to leave. They knew what would happen. President Davis listened to hours of argument. People shouted at each other. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted to help. A few wanted to ignore the whole thing and pretend it was not happening. Finally, she stood up. The room got quiet. I've made my decision, she said. We're going to help them. The room exploded in voices. Some people cheered. Others yelled in anger. President Davis held up her hand for silence. But we're not doing this for the Council, she continued. We're not doing it because they asked nicely or because they promised us things. We're doing it because of who we are. She walked to the big window that looked out over the city. Humans don't abandon people in need. We don't let children die because their parents made mistakes. We don't watch genocide happen because we're angry about politics. This will cost us, Admiral Thompson warned. Ships, lives, resources we need for our own colonies. Yes, it will, President Davis agreed. But the cost of doing nothing is higher. If we let the alliance fall, how long before this hegemony decides that humanity looks like a good target? How long before they come for our worlds? Dr. Lee nodded. And there's something else. If we save them, we save ourselves too. We become part of the galaxy again. Our children won't have to grow up alone in the dark. Our children won't grow up to be ashamed of us, added Governor Martinez. They'll know that when people needed help, humanity answered the call. President Davis turned back to the room. I know this is hard. I know a lot of you are angry. But this is what makes us human. This is what makes us different from the people who are attacking the alliance. She looked at Admiral Foster. Kate, how long will it take to get our fleets ready? 2 weeks for the first wave. A month for full deployment. Do it and send a message back to the Exile. Tell her help is coming. The meeting broke up with people talking loudly. Some were excited. Others were worried. But they were all united in one thing. Humanity was going back to war. In space stations and colonies across human territory, ships began to move. Weapons were loaded. Soldiers said goodbye to their families. The greatest fleet in human history was getting ready to launch. The aliens had called them monsters once. Now they would learn what monsters really looked like when they fought to protect the innocent. Admiral Katie Foster stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Defiance. Through the big windows, she could see 200 human ships floating in perfect formation. They had just arrived in the Zephyrian home system after traveling for 2 weeks. Straight. What they found was worse than the reports had said. The beautiful blue and green planet that housed 6 billion bird-like aliens was surrounded by dark gray ships. The enemy vessels were huge and ugly, covered in weapons that pointed down at the helpless world below. Smoke rose from burning cities on the planet's surface. The orbital stations that once welcomed peaceful traders were now twisted metal and fire. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Danny Rodriguez from his station. I'm counting 300 enemy ships. They have us outnumbered 3-1. Katie nodded calmly. She had expected this. The hegemony was not stupid. They knew the important. Worlds would be heavily defended. But they had made one big mistake. They had never fought humans before. All ships, this is Admiral Foster, she said into her microphone. Her voice went out to every human ship in the fleet. She also made sure the enemy could hear her. To the hegemony fleet, you are attacking innocent people and destroying their homes. Leave now or face the consequences. The answer came fast. Bright red beams of energy shot out from the enemy ships. Plasma cannons that could melt through normal ship armor fired at the human fleet. But the human ships were not there anymore. New quantum drives did something that seemed impossible. They let ships step in and out of normal space in tiny fractions of a second. One moment a human ship was in front of an enemy gun. The next moment it was behind the enemy ship, firing back. All ships, engage the enemy, Katie ordered. Show them what happens when they hurt innocent people. What followed was not really a battle. It was more like a lesson. Human ships appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They fired their new quantum torpedoes and vanished before the enemy could shoot back. The torpedoes tore through enemy shields like they were made of paper. Explosions lit up space as the huge hegemony ships broke apart. The enemy tried to run. Their big ships turned toward empty space, trying to escape. But the human ships were too fast. Every time an enemy vessel tried to flee, human fighters appeared in front of it. The quantum drives let the smaller human ships move like lightning. In 6 hours, it was over. Most of the enemy fleet was destroyed. The few ships that survived were running away as fast as they could, sending surrender messages and begging for mercy. Not one human ship was lost. On the planet below, Colonel Danny Martinez led teams of human soldiers into the damaged cities. The destruction was terrible. Whole neighborhoods had been bombed flat. Refugee camps stretched for miles in every direction. The bird-like Zephyrians huddled in groups, too scared to come out of hiding. Danny walked carefully through the ruins of what had once been a beautiful city. His soldiers spread out behind him, carrying medical supplies and food. They had their weapons ready, but they were here to help, not fight. A small sound made him turn. Behind a collapsed wall, he saw movement. Someone was hiding there. "Hello," Danny called out softly. "We're here to help. We're humans." A young Zephyrian female slowly came out from behind the rubble. Her silver feathers were dirty, and some were missing. In her arms, she carried a small child who was hurt and bleeding. "Are you really human?" she asked in a whisper. Her voice was full of fear and hope. "Yes, ma'am," Danny said gently. He activated his medical scanner and pointed it at the injured child. "We're here to help you and your family." The female Zephyrian looked at him with her large golden eyes. Tears started running down her feathered face. "They told us humans were monsters," she said. "They told us you would never come back to help us." "Well, they were wrong," Danny said with a smile. He called over one of his medics. "Let's get your child to our hospital ship. We'll take good care of both of you." All across the planet, similar scenes were happening. Human doctors worked around the clock to treat the wounded. Human engineers fixed broken power systems and water supplies. Human soldiers protected refugee camps from any remaining enemy forces. The Zephyrians could not believe what they were seeing. These were the same humans their government had called too violent and dangerous. Now those humans were risking their lives to save Zephyrian children they had never met. Back in space, Admiral Foster received urgent messages from all across Alliance territory. The hegemony was retreating everywhere, but they were destroying everything they could not take with them. Dozens of worlds needed immediate help. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're getting surrender requests from the remaining hegemony commanders. They want to negotiate terms." Katie thought about that. The enemy was beaten, but they were not completely destroyed. They still had fleets in other parts of the galaxy. If humanity wanted to end this war quickly, they needed to make the enemy understand that fighting was hopeless. "Put me through to their flagship," she ordered. The hologram that appeared showed a creature that looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. General Krexter wore elaborate armor covered in metals and symbols of rank. He had built his career conquering weak civilizations that could not fight back, but his yellow eyes now showed fear. "You wish to discuss terms?" Krexter asked without any polite words first. "The terms are simple," Katie replied coldly. "You will withdraw from all Alliance territory immediately. You will pay to fix the damage you caused, and you will sign a treaty promising never to attack Alliance worlds again." "And if we refuse?" the lizard general asked. Katie's smile was as cold as space itself. "Then we'll show you why the Alliance was afraid of us in the first place. You've seen what we can do when we're being gentle. You really don't want to see what happens when we get angry." Krexter looked at something off-screen. Probably reports of his fleets being destroyed by human ships that fought like nothing he had ever seen before. Ships that could appear anywhere and disappear just as fast. Weapons that could crack his strongest vessels like eggs. "We accept your terms," he said finally. Smart choice, Katie said. You have 48 hours to start withdrawing. Any of your ships we find in Alliance space after that will be destroyed without warning. The transmission ended. Around her, the bridge crew started to cheer. They had done it. They had saved the Alliance and defeated an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. But Katie did not celebrate yet. This was just the beginning. The Alliance was saved, but it was also broken. Billions of people had lost their homes. Entire civilizations had been damaged or destroyed. It would take years to rebuild. And then there was the bigger question. What happened next? The Alliance had kicked humanity out once. Would they do it? Again when the danger was over? Would they once again decide that humans were too dangerous to have around? "Admiral," called out her tactical officer, "we're receiving thank you messages from all over Alliance space. The Zephyrian government wants to give you their highest medal of honor. The crystal people are composing songs about the human fleet. Even the plant-like beings are growing special flowers in our honor." Katie nodded. It felt good to be appreciated. But she remembered the last time humans had been heroes to the Alliance. That had not lasted very long. "Keep monitoring enemy movements," she ordered, "and prepare casualty reports for Earth Command. The President will want to know what this cost us." The war was won, but the real test was just beginning. Humanity had proven they could fight. Now they had to prove they could be trusted with the peace that followed. President Monica Davis sat at the head of a huge round table. The meeting room on New Geneva Station was bigger than anything ever built before. Around the table sat representatives from over 300 different species. Some were the old Alliance members who had kicked humanity out 5 years ago. Many others were new faces, civilizations that had asked for human protection during the war. The station itself was a symbol of the new galaxy. Built by human engineers, but designed by artists from dozens of different worlds, it floated in space, between Earth and the Alliance core worlds. It was neutral ground where all species could meet as equals. 1 year had passed since the hegemony surrender. 1 year of rebuilding, of healing, and of difficult conversations about the future. Counselor Thexara stood up to speak. She looked much better than she had in her desperate message a year ago. Her blue skin was healthy again. Her robes were clean and beautiful. But there were new lines around her 6 eyes that had not been there before. The war had changed her. The Terran Defense Charter we are voting on today is more than just a military agreement, she began. Her voice was strong, but it also carried something that had never been there before: respect. It is our admission of a truth we chose to ignore for too long. She looked directly at President Davis. Peace is not something that just happens. Peace is not the natural state of the galaxy. Peace must be protected by those brave enough to stand against those who would destroy it. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat at President Davis's right side. He had been promoted to Secretary of Galactic Affairs. The same man who had been thrown out of the Alliance 5 years ago was now one of the most important people in the galaxy. He reviewed the papers in front of him one more time. The new charter was very different from the old Alliance rules. Human ships would patrol all Alliance space, but they would not need permission to act when they saw threats. Human colonies could be built wherever humans thought they were needed for defense. Most importantly, humanity would have equal say in all major decisions. Never again would they be junior partners in their own alliance. "The numbers speak for themselves," said Dr. Rachel Kim, now director of the Galactic Recovery Initiative. She stood up and activated a holographic display. 43 worlds have been completely rebuilt. Industry across Alliance space is now 30% stronger than it was before the war. The display showed charts and graphs that told an amazing story. Human engineering had not just fixed the damage from the war. It had made everything better. Human medical technology had saved millions of lives. Human agricultural methods had ended hunger on 12 different worlds. Human manufacturing techniques had brought wealth to species that had been poor for centuries. But the most important changes were not shown in charts and graphs. General Danny Martinez, now head of Alliance Security, gave his final report on the defeated enemy. The last hegemony resistance groups have been eliminated. General Krexter remains in prison, awaiting trial for war crimes. The Outer Rim territories are secure and peaceful. The former enemy worlds were now some of the strongest supporters of human leadership. Species that had been conquered and enslaved by the hegemony had seen what real strength looked like when humans freed them. They understood the difference between power used to hurt and power used to protect. But the biggest change was in how people thought about humans. A young Zephyrian student named Krita stood up to speak. She had been just a child during the siege of her home world. Human soldiers had saved her family from the burning ruins of their city. Before the war, our teachers told us humans were dangerous, she said in her clear, musical voice. They said humans loved violence and could not be trusted. But when my city was burning and my little brother was hurt, it was human doctors who saved his life. It was human soldiers who carried us to safety. She looked around the room at all the different alien faces. Now our teachers tell us different stories. They tell us about brave humans who travel across the galaxy to protect people they have never met. They tell us about human values like courage and sacrifice and never giving up. An old Vorthan crystal being chimed in harmony. Our children, asked to attend human schools. They want to learn what humans call the warrior's code. The idea that true strength means protecting those who are weaker than yourself. President Davis smiled. When humanity had been exiled, many humans had been bitter and angry. They had wanted revenge against the species that had thrown them out. But this was better than revenge. This was vindication. A Aquilian delegate spread his silver wings. The philosophical impact cannot be measured in numbers. Human ideas about honor, duty, and sacrifice have begun to change how we all think about our responsibilities to each other. The formal voting began. One by one, each species cast their vote on the new charter. The results were never in doubt. Even species that had once feared human power now understood that they needed it. When the voting was finished, President Davis stood up. Through the big windows of the station, Earth could be seen in the distance. Blue and beautiful, no longer. Isolated, but now the acknowledged heart of a vast community of worlds. 5 years ago, you called us monsters, she said quietly. You said we were too violent, too dangerous for civilized society. You threw us out because you were afraid of what we might do. She paused, looking around the room at all the alien faces. Some looked ashamed. Others looked grateful. All of them looked relieved. You were right to be afraid, she continued. But you were afraid of the wrong thing. You should have been afraid of what would happen without us. Admiral Katie Foster, now Supreme Commander of Alliance Forces, joined the conversation. The galaxy learned an important lesson. Peace is not free. Someone has to be willing to pay the price for it. Someone has to stand guard while others sleep safely. Dr. Kim added, the Zephyrian children I treated during the siege have grown up. They call human soldiers Sky Guardians now. Their parents tell them bedtime stories about brave humans who come from the stars to protect the innocent. President Davis walked to the big window. Behind her, representatives from hundreds of worlds talked excitedly about the future. Trade agreements were being planned. Research partnerships were being formed. Cultural exchange programs were being organized. From monsters to guardians in 5 years, she said to Jake Morrison. Not bad for a species that was supposedly too violent for civilized society. Jake joined her at the window. They learned something important. They thought they were protecting their civilization by getting rid of us. Instead, they almost destroyed it. Sometimes the very things that make someone seem dangerous are the same things that make them necessary. Do you think it will last? This time? Admiral Foster asked. Or will they forget again when the next generation grows up in peace? President Davis considered the question. Below them, Earth turned slowly in space. On its surface, children were being born who would grow up knowing that their parents protected the galaxy. They would inherit not just the responsibility of being guardians, but the honor that came with it. Maybe they'll forget, she said, but we won't. And as long as humans remember who we are and what we stand for, the galaxy will be safe. The meeting was ending. Representatives were shaking hands and tentacles, and whatever their species used for greetings. Agreements were being signed. The future was being planned. Humanity had been driven away as monsters and returned as heroes. But more importantly, they had proven that true strength was not about conquering others. It was about being willing to stand between the innocent and the darkness. The galaxy was safe, and it would stay safe as long as humans were willing to bear the weight of its protection.